Okay, so thank you for joining me in today's webinar, Security and Logging 21 CFR Part 11 Compliance in FCS Express 7. Today's webinar is going to focus on the features that are available in FCS Express to enable 21 CFR Part 11 compliance in your data analysis in FCS Express. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this from two different angles. We're going to look at this from a user-based security standpoint, and we're also going to look at this from what we call a layout-based security standpoint. Okay, and what I mean by that is, as far as a user-based security standpoint is concerned, the idea is that in FCS Express, each user that logs into the software has their own individual unique login and password combination. Okay, and as users are added to the database, they're assigned to various security groups that can be created within FCS Express. And what these security groups are basically a list of permissions that can define what actions are available and that can be performed by the members of that group. So these security groups allow you to create different levels of access within FCS Express. And I'll show you a little bit more about what that entails and how we can do that a little bit later. From a layout-based perspective, what we can do in FCS Express is we can define functionality for a particular layout. And it's similar to how we can create security groups. And the idea is that we could define what permissions are available specifically in a layout. Okay, and they only apply to that layout. Okay, so the idea is that in the event that if the current layout belongs to a layout security group that restricts a certain action, but the current user is part of a security group that has permission to perform that action will not be allowed. So in essence, both user permissions and layout permissions must be allowed for a particular action to be performed. Basically what it's saying is that the layout status definition trumps any permission that would be allowable based off of whatever security group a user belongs. Okay, and we're going to talk about that again in a little more detail as we go on. Also, as part of today's webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about electronic signatures, how we can create them and add them to our layout, how we can create a table to display the statuses of those electronic signatures, and how we can sign and unsign electronic signatures in FCS Express. We're also going to talk about audit trails and how we can use them to look at all the different actions that have been performed and how FCS Express logs those actions within directly in your layout. And we're also going to finish off by talking about the various administrative features that are available as part of this 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Okay, we're going to talk about the different options that are available with regards to the security configurations, some of the preferences that are available directly within the software. We're going to talk about some of the reports that an administrator can create to see what the usage is like for a particular license. And we're also going to talk briefly about the different database options that are available with regards to the 21 CFR compliance. Okay, so anyone that has a security and logging license with us, they're required to have their own database set up. And what we do is we have various options of how they can enable that. And they, but basically that puts the client in charge of maintaining a database that stores all their user information for that particular license. Okay, and again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So to give you an idea of the different parts of 21 CFR Part 11 in which FCS Express is compliant, or at least can provide you compliance, you can actually see that within this matrix. And what we do, rather than read it here on the screen, you can actually go directly to our website and download a PDF that shows you a matrix and refers to the different sections with a summary of that rule that makes up that section and how we can enable compliance to meet that particular section. Okay, if anyone has any questions about obtaining this matrix, please let me know. Please feel free to contact us at support@denovosoftware.com, and we can provide you the link through which you could download this. You could also go to our website and simply just do a search for 21 CFR matrix, and it should come up as one of the search topics. Okay. So at this point, we can start talking about how do we integrate security into FCS Express. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is, going back to our outline, we're going to talk about user-defined security. Okay, and the user-defined security in FCS Express refers to two things. It refers to user administration, basically the creation of a new user, and then the security group definitions. Okay, so with regards to the security tools that we offer, you can find these from the File tab, from the Security option. Okay, and here are the various tools that we'll go through during today's webinar. So before I even talk about user administration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the security group definitions. Okay, because we'll need some security group definitions before we can actually create some users, because once we create the users, then we assign them to a security group. So to access my security group definitions, I'm just going to click on this tool, and I'm going to be presented with this window that allows me to define the security groups that I want to have within my security system. So automatically FCS Express will come with an administrator security group. Okay, but what we can do is we can add a new security group, and when we add a new security group, we have the ability to give it a name. So the name of the security group may be something other than administrator. Maybe you want to call this techs, with the various members of your lab through which are going to be assigned to this particular group. Okay. You can put a description. And then down below, as part of the security group, this is where we define what permissions are available to the members of this security group. Okay, and you have two ways of how you can do this. So we can do it where we include all the different permissions that are checked down here, or we could do it based off of all the permissions except the ones that are checked below. Okay, and there are various options here. You can actually see that each one of these sections have their own subsections and different permissions that are available as part of that. But the idea is you can simply just choose an option and then choose the permissions that are going to make up this particular group. For this particular option, maybe what I want to do is I'm going to include all the permissions except the ones that I check below. And in this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to check the ability to remove 2D plots or 1D histograms. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is that the members of this text group is going to have access to all these permissions except for the ability to delete two-dimensional plots or one-dimensional histograms. Once I make those selections, I can click OK, and you'll see it's added to the list. Okay, so again, the security group definitions, they're all defined by the particular user, by the client. Okay, the only security group that we define by default by Novo software is the administrator group. Okay, because really all customers have their own security groups, their own permissions that they want to assign as they see fit. Okay, so now that I've created that security group, I can just click close. And now we can talk about user administration. So if I just go to my File tab, go back to Security, and I can click on User Administration. And user administration is where I'm going to create new users to access this license. So I've added myself as a user. Any existing user here in the list can be edited. So you can provide a login name, a password, the first and last name, and an email. You can determine whether or not that user can log into the software, whether you allow them to log out, and whether or not you want them to change their password during the next time that they log in. But down below is also where we're going to assign the group to which this user belongs. And I've assigned myself to the administrator group. Okay. From this window is where we can add new users just by clicking the Add button. Okay. So let me create a new user. I'm just going to call this one John. I'll put a password and then I'll reconfirm that password. Put a first name and a last name. If I wanted to, I could put an employee ID, but I'm required to do so. I'll put an email address. If I wanted to specify a lab name, from where this user is from, then I could put that, I could just simply load that in there just by typing it in. I could determine whether or not I want to allow them to log in or log out, and whether or not I want to request a password change the next time they log in. So if you're an administrator and you're trying to create a login for someone and you give them a default password and you want them to change that the next time they log in, you could do that just by selecting this option here. And then I'm going to assign this user to the text group. I'm going to click OK. So some of the other options that we see here are we can remove users, we can duplicate users, we can see the active logins. So we can actually see everyone who's logged in, what their login name is, what their Windows username is, from what computer, the IP address, and the date. What we can also do is we can add users from a CSV file. Okay, and this basically will allow you to add multiple users all at once to this list. Okay, if you have any questions about that, please contact us at support@novosoftware.com and we'll provide you with more information about how to format that CSV file. That CSV file does have to be formatted specifically. It does need certain column names. You can find all this information on our website, or you can just contact us at support@novosoftware.com for more information about that. What we can also do is if we had a whole list of users here, we can export all those users to CSV. Okay, so if you wanted to keep track of all the different users that are in the system, if you wanted a way to email them all regarding any news that you wanted to pump out, you could do that just by exporting all these users to CSV. FCS Express does have LDAP capability. So if this was enabled, we can actually add directly from LDAP here in this user administration window. Otherwise, I'm just going to close. Okay, so now what I'm going to do just to demonstrate the user security that we've just created. So we just created the new user, John. We added John to the text security group. And the permissions that were available to that text security group is basically everything except deleting two-dimensional plots or one-dimensional histograms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply log out of the software. And I'm going to enter the new login for that particular user with their password. I'm going to open up the layout that we just had. And then we're just simply going to go back to the page where we had that data. Okay, so now that I'm listed as John, if I try to delete one of these plots, you'll see that this operation is not allowed. Okay, so now that I'm part of that security group, whatever restrictions have been made as part of that security group, if I try to perform that action, you'll see that we'll get a message that describes why I'm not able to perform that action. Okay, so whether it's a two-dimensional plot or one of these histograms, should be the same thing. Okay. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm just simply going to go log back out, and I'm just going to come back in as myself. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about layout-based security. Okay. So with layout-based security, this will allow us to create permissions that are specific just to this particular layout. And we can access that from our File tab, our Security option, and you'll see that there'll be a tile for layout status definitions. And it's pretty similar to what you've seen before with the security groups. I've actually gone through and already created a layout status for us as part of this demonstration. Okay. The unrestricted is here by default. Okay. But again, it's based off of the user, the client, to add as many layout status definitions as they need to for their situation. Okay, we don't really provide anything other than the unrestricted status. But much like we did with the security groups, we can simply just add a new group, which I've done here, and I've named it restricted. In this case, I'm just going to click on modify so I can see the different properties that I made for this restricted group. Okay, so I gave it a name. You don't necessarily have to give it a description, but the options are still the same, where you can determine whether to include all the permissions checked below or whether you want to include all the permissions except the ones you selected below. So what I've done is I've actually selected permissions that will not allow me to remove a gate, or again, to not delete any plots. Okay? So once we have this layout status defined, the way we apply this layout status to this layout is going to be from the File tab to Info. Okay? We're going to click on Layout. We're going to click on Layout Options, and you'll see that there's a category for Layout Group Security Access. And here is where we could assign whatever layout status we want. In this case, I'm going to apply the restricted layout security access and click OK. And again, what this layout security status is going to do, it's going to prevent me from deleting any of these plots or any of these gates. Okay, so if I select a gate and try to delete it, again, you'll see that this operation is not allowed because of that. Okay. So it's a great way to add another layer of security to your analysis, to your layout. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to talk about electronic signatures. So our security package allows users to enable electronic signatures that they can insert directly into the layout. Okay? And what an electronic signature is, it's a way to provide a different label that they want to address for a different part of the analysis workflow. So with the electronic signatures, we can access those from File, Info, and you'll see that there'll be a tile where we can access our electronic signatures. Okay, I'm going to click on this little triangle, and we're going to open up our signature list. So the signatures that we create are specific for a layout. Okay, so the idea is that we're going to create a list of signatures that can be used for this particular layout. And we can do that just by clicking on the Add button. Okay, so when we add a layout, when we add an electronic signature to the layout, we'll come in, we'll give it a name. Maybe I'm going to call this Analyzed. I can assign what group is going to have access to the signature. So maybe this is a signature that would only be accessed by the techs. And maybe it's a signature that they would apply to this layout before it's reviewed by an administrator. Okay, and then I can actually put that as a description here where I describe that the techs can use this before the data is reviewed by an administrator. Okay, and then we can add another signature, where in this case, I'm going to call this Reviewed. We'll make this for the administrators. And the idea is that this electronic signature will be used when the administrator has reviewed the data. Okay. Now, when we create electronic signatures, as I mentioned, they reside within this layout. They're not necessarily global signatures that you could use wherever you want. But what you can do is you can actually save these electronic signatures and then load them into another layout. Okay. So to save these, I would simply just click on the Save option. And when I'm prompted to save, I can simply just find this location where I'm going to save these electronic signatures. Give it a name. And this is going to be saved as an XML file. So if I wanted to use these electronic signatures again in another layout, I will open up that layout and click on the Load button to load that electronic signatures list. Okay. Once I'm done, I could just click OK. And those signatures are now available for use in this layout. Okay. So now that I have these electronic signatures in my layout, I can display those signatures as part of my overall analysis. And the way I can do that is by inserting a text box. And then right-clicking within that text box to insert a signature table. And what this will do, it'll create this table where I can see the signatures that exist in this layout, and I can see what the status is, whether they've been signed, unsigned, or never signed, as in this case. And if they are signed or unsigned, who did the signing or unsigning, what the date was, what the time was, and we also have the ability to look at, see what time zone in which this document was signed. Okay, so now to apply a signature, I'm going to go to File, Info, and from the Electronic Signatures tile, you'll see that I have the ability to sign or unsign. So I'm going to click Sign. And you see that I only have the ability to access the signatures that have been assigned to my security group. Okay? So rather than actually review this, I want to probably complete this. So let me sign in as John. So that way John can do his job, complete the analysis, and then forward it to the administrator for review. Okay, so prior to closing, I did save that layout. So that way we can keep the signature table that's intact there. Again, you can see that my table is still intact. It's never been signed. So if you were creating a template, you can install this table as part of that template, and you'll be able to see what the status is of that template. Okay. But now that I'm logged in as John, I'll go to File, Info, and Sign. And you see now I only have access to the Analyze portion of the electronic signatures. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that signature. I'm going to put in some notes and then click Sign. And when I do that, I'm going to be presented to enter my login name and my password. And once I do that, you'll see here that that particular signature will update in my signature table. So the analyzed signature has now been signed by John Smith on that day, that time, and in this time zone. Let me save this. So now I can come in and log in as myself. And I can complete the electronic signatures that I need for this layout. Okay. And again, I'll just access that from Info, Sign, put in some notes, and again, Sign. Okay. And then you'll see how the table will update automatically. Okay. So now as the next part of our security package, we offer the logging feature or the audit trail capability. Okay. And the way we can access the audit trail is from File, Info, and there's a tile for View Layout History. So FCS Express will record every action that was performed within this layout. It'll record the action, who did that action, and when they did that action. Okay. So what date and what time. If I scroll all the way below, I can see that my signatures are here too. So it's not only based off of the user, it depends on any user that logs in and performs an action and saves it with this layout. Okay, so in terms of the electronic signature, you can see that what signature was applied, any comments, and who did the signing. Okay. And you can see there actually is quite a bit of detail in some of these. Okay, but with this audit trail, what we can do is if we need to make a record of this audit trail, we do have the ability to print or to save as PDF. So if you're in need of recording this information and archiving it, you can do that using one of these tools. And then after archiving it, you do have the ability to clear the layout history, where if I clear that, I can put in a note where maybe I want to put in the date and just click OK. You can see the entire layout history has been cleared. Okay, in a lot of cases, the audit trail for a particular layout can get pretty long. So if you want to do some maintenance of that audit trail, you can certainly do that by using this tool to clear the layout history. Of course, you might want to archive that information first too, just in case. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about for today's webinar are the various administrative options that we have available in as part of the security package. Okay, and the first part of that I want to talk about is the ability to edit your security configuration. And basically, through the Edit Security Configuration window, which we can access from File, Security, and clicking on the Edit Security Configuration tab, what we can do is we can change some of the preferences that are available in the software. Okay, so for your institution name, you can simply just put in wherever it is that you work. For the password policies, what we can do is we can institute different policies that you want to enact as part of this license. So for example, if you want to change the number of days before a user must change their password, okay? The default is 0, which is they're never really required to change their password, but if you want to establish that type of security, you can determine that just by entering a number for the day. You can also put in a preference for the number of failed login attempts before the user account is locked. Again, the default 0, but if you want to enable that type of security, if you want to make it so that way if they put in 3 attempts that they're automatically locked out, then you could certainly format that here. You also have the ability to prohibit different passwords from being reused. So if a user needs to change their password, if you want to restrict it so that way they don't keep using the same password over and over again, then you can select this option and the number of days between the times that they change passwords where they're not allowed to use that password again. So the last two options enable FCS Express to basically turn the software off if there's any inactivity. We do that one of two ways. So for example, the idle time before a user is logged out means how much time has passed between the user actually doing something in the software. If the mouse hasn't moved and the software is open, how much time do you want to let pass before FCS Express automatically logs that user out? Okay, because if a user is logged into the software and they're not really using it, what that does is it takes up a valuable seat on that license for maybe someone else who needs to use the software. Okay, so what you can do is you can come in and say maybe after 5 minutes, if someone who's using the software really hasn't done anything and the software is idle during that time, the software will log them out. So that way you can regain the seat. And one of the other preferences that we have here is the amount of time between pings to the database for keeping the session alive. Okay, so as part of this, and we'll talk a little bit about the databases coming up in a little bit, is that FCS Express, for the security option to work, it needs to be integrated into a database. Okay, and as part of that, FCS Express has to maintain connection to that database. So as part of that maintenance, what it does, it'll actually ping the database and will expect a response from that ping. And then what we can do is we can customize the amount of time that occurs between those pings. Okay. So we also have the ability to set up an email server because we do have the ability to send out various mail notifications. Okay, you can set up an email to notify who these messages is going to and what messages are being sent. Do you want to be notified every time a session started or failed login, or any of these other situations that you see here? And then you can test the sending of that email to make sure that all your SMTP settings are accurate. And then finally, if you do have LDAP capability and you want to um, enable that, also as a side note, LDAP is an additional option that you can purchase as part of the license. It's not there by default, but if it's something that you're interested in, please let us know. You can contact us at support@novosoftware.com and we'll get you more information about that. But if you do have LDAP as part of your license, then what you can do is you can simply enable it. And the FCS Express should automatically detect the host name, the default domain, and the routes that are available for your network. And then what the user can do, or the admin can do, is they can enable single sign-on as part of this LDAP integration. Okay. So the next thing we can talk about is part of our administrative options that are available in the software are the ability to create reports. So again, from the security option, from the security tab, you'll see that there's a tile for reports. So FCS Express will gives you the ability to create different reports based off of what you want to see, the type of usage that the software is getting. Okay, so we could look at all events. We could look at failed logins. It'll provide a report as to who tried to log in, what the workstation is, and all that stuff. But you can also see that there's an option here for full sessions report. Okay, but all these different reports function in the same manner. So if I simply just show my my full session report, this report will show me all the different sessions that have been occurring on this license. So when the connection was made, what the name of the Windows user, from which computer they were accessing the software, what the IP address is, the login date and time, the login name and what their first name and last name is, the logout, whether they were logged out, and basically the overall time for that session. Okay, so this report allows you to filter on this information too. So if you're interested to see how many unique users you've had log in within a certain period, you can come in, you can drag the login name to this upper bar, and you can see that I've had 2 users, and I can actually expand each one of these to see the individual sessions that they've used to access the software. I also have the ability to filter my criteria. So rather than the last week, maybe I want to go all the way back to November. And then any logins that happened in November, I'll see that within this list. Okay. So regardless of how you set up this full sessions report, or any of these reports, you do have the ability to export this information. And we can export it to text, to HTML, to XML, or to Excel. Okay, so if you need that level of report capability, it is built into the software directly. Okay, and finally, as I mentioned before, as part of the security license, the user will be required to have a database as a way to maintain this license and keep track of all the different users that are part of this license, all the different actions that have been stored within those full session reports that we just seen. And you can actually find that information on our website. So when a purchase is made by a user who's interested in having the security and logging features enabled as part of their license, they'll be asked for what kind of database that they want to use as part of that license. And what we do is we offer 2 primary options. So if you have a current SQL Server license, that's great. If you have a DBA that's able to administer that database, that's even better. But we are capable of working with Microsoft SQL Server. Okay. What we also do is we offer the ability to have more of a local database. And what this is it's a folder-based database option where within that folder there are different files that manage various aspects of the database, like the user list or the events or a lot of the information that's recorded as part of a session. Okay. So basically what we do is we offer whichever one that works best for you. There's no cost associated with it. It's all part of the license. So if you decide to use SQL Server, you can either have built a full license for SQL Server, or if you had Management Studio using SQLite, you can certainly use that too. Okay? Or if you simply just prefer to use Elevate DB and have a folder-based system, you could do that as well. Just know that SQL is a much more robust system. Being a file-based system or a folder-based system with Elevate DB, folder-based systems tend to are more prone to corruption. Okay, and at that point, once your database becomes corrupted for whatever reason, then you'll need to revert it to a backup if you have one, which we highly recommend. Okay, and then after that database has been set up, if you've chosen Microsoft SQL Server, what we do is we provide suggestions or instructions of how you can configure Microsoft SQL Server to integrate with FCS Express. And what we do is we offer two main ways of how you'd want to create that. But the idea is that you would create an INI file, a configuration file, that we would install within the network installation folder. So when you launch FCS Express, if you have an option for your security to use SQL Server, it will automatically look for this INI file. FCS Express will look for this INI file. And within this INI file, there will be a connection string. That's going to determine where that database is located on your SQL Server. Okay, and then it will write the tables to that. It will read from the tables if the tables have already been established. The purpose of the INI file is to maintain and direct FCS Express to where that database is. Okay, and we do have some sample connection strings here if you're using an ADO or an ODBC connection. But if you also have any questions regarding how to configure this specifically for your setup, please contact us support at denovosoftware.com and we'll be happy to help you with that. Okay, and that pretty much wraps up our webinar today. So thank you for joining me today. Basically, I just want to wrap up this webinar by saying that FCS Express offers a comprehensive security and logging system to support 21 CFR Part 11 compliance for your analytical needs. The ability to use security groups does give you the ability to provide and specify which permissions are available for the various members of your lab or of your institution. And then basically it's a great way to kind of manage of who can do what and determine what kind of control the various users have within your lab. The layout status definitions provide an additional layer of security to that specific layout. So if you want to add another layer that supersedes anything that's defined by the security group, you could do that with the layout status definitions. The electronic signatures can be built right into the layout and can be used to indicate various states of analysis. And again, you can make electronic signatures that are available for various members, for various security groups and the members of those security groups. The audit trail is a comprehensive history of the layout, of all the different actions that occur in your layout, and it provides detailed information about each of the actions that are performed within the layout, what the action was, the details of that action, who performed, and when they performed that action. And finally, your FCS Express can be configured to fit your needs and be used with a choice of database options. And depending on what needs you have or what database options you have available to you, we can certainly work with you to help you integrate those options. Okay, so again, if there are any questions, please feel free to email us at support@denovosoftware.com. If you wanted to try out a demo of these security features, please let us know. You are available to download a demo from our website, but the demo that's the standard demo that we have available on our website does not have the security features enabled for it. But what we can do is we can certainly turn them on for you if that's something that you want to test out as part of your trial period. Okay, and just let us know. Just contact us at support@denovosoftware.com. Okay, I'm going to stay on the line for a little bit to take any questions that pop up. Okay, but again, thank you for joining me on today's webinar. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you and have a great day.